Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm so glad you could all join us today. It's such a pleasure as well to welcome Susan Cianciolo as our guest tonight. While our doors remain closed at Japan Society Gallery, we are very much looking forward to reopening in the future. Our current show, which is there but closed to the public, as Susan mentioned, Boro Textiles Sustainable Aesthetics, is viewable online on our website, as well as through audio, visual, and 3D tours. But in the meantime, we have the true pleasure of welcoming Susan Cianciolo, whose textile-based works are featured in the exhibition. And then just a quick intro to Susan. She works across media and boundaries, from fashion design to art to sort of, I would say, sculptures. And her practice is really defined by an intuitive methodology of assembling found textiles, drawings, paintings, and even three-dimensional objects that she weaves into tapestries and DIY kits. She also employs her textile pieces through performative, collaborative performances. Her work is often involves the amalgamation of fabric remnants from various sources and repurposing. And this is a process that has many connections to the historic Boro textiles, which have themselves been very layered and repaired over several generations. So this can be seen in some hanging tapestries that Susan contributed to the show, in addition to a multimedia floor piece that she completed for this exhibition in particular. So hopefully you have had a chance to see it, or if you have not, you can check online for images and the video tours, as I mentioned. So Susan began her career as a fashion designer in the 1990s with her clothing label Run, which consisted of handcrafted one-off garments made from altered, found, or recycled textiles. And she also worked closely with collaborators around the world, but including Japan. So I hope we have a chance to talk a little bit about that today. We have 10 of her ensembles as a part of the exhibition from her collection Run 12, which was titled God is a Jacket, great title. And these were deconstructed and reconstructed. And when you look at them really closely, you can see that there are these taped, hand-stitched elements to them, these really ad hoc, sort of intuitive, and yet meticulously composed aspects to them. So I think without further ado, we'll see some of that attention and care today with Susan, and speaking with her about some projects she's working on currently as well. So please, let's all welcome warmly Susan Cianciolo. Hi, Susan, how are you?
How are you?
Well, if we can get our, our friend here to give up his nap spot. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so we'll start with the live demo for anyone who wants to participate right now. I'm going to attempt to do that as well. I have some sewing things. But the focus will be on Susan, of course, who will sort of introduce a sort of just a quick overview, if you could give us, of the workshop, or what the project is.
I told you, I remember being in Tokyo at having a show at the Parco Gallery, and
Right.
on Girls' Day, they asked me to do a demo, so I remember doing this, and what at the time when we created it, there was a snap here, and then a back of a snap on the jacket, so you could take it on and off, and that came in a lot of different ways, like on T-shirts, or there was little crochet chains or necklaces. But as we kept making them year after year, I started adding elastics so you can put it in the hair. And then this one has a little like snap clip, so you could wear it like that, you know. This one has a barrette. And so more or less you could put a safety pin at the back. So it can be more of an accessory for clothes or hair. And This one has that very basic kind of hair clip. And to make it, you can use any kind of fabric. This is a pretty cotton flower printed, which my mom ordered online and had sent to me as a surprise. And what you need is just a rectangular strip. And it can be long or short. There's just no specific rules at all. And as I remember, I think it was a little bit on the shorter side. So maybe, I'm just guessing from eye, something like that. And then you take a needle and thread. Now, funny enough, my daughter and I are laughing because I have one spool of thread. It's so funny, you know. And then, trying to remember. Okay, yeah, so the next step is as you see this one, to get the sort of flower petals, you just cut, slash in. You're making tiny rectangles, but you're leaving half or less than half not slashed. So it's just one side slashing. And what we discovered over time is that this basic pattern can be transformed into so many directions like that. This is when you don't slash it, and it's more of like a rosebud. And we ended up doing thousands of these for wedding dresses, like tiny in silk. Actually, my mom did that. And then I sewed them on because she can make them so perfect, you know. So once you know this pattern, you can just change it and formulate it into all small, big, all different ways. Here's, I lost my needle and thread. Okay, so we have that done. And then this is, the next part is, it's basically gathering. So you bring your thread in, and then you're just, if everyone knows a running stitch, it's the easiest stitch. It's just a straight stitch. Front to back, front to back, front to back. And it's also a stitch that you use for gathering. So as you can see, so you do a bunch of stitches, pull it through, and what's going to end up happening is you're going to gather it at the end, and that's what's going to make the flowers. So I'm just going to do a running stitch through this whole strip, and I just gather as much as I possibly can. I'm using a pretty big needle, and then I pull it through so it doesn't get too tangled, and then I go back and do some more. Are you able to see it okay?
I can see it. Yeah. Yes.
The funny thing about not being in person, usually I could just check or see if you need help.
Yeah, and if anybody does, feel free to unmute yourself and jump in, please.
If you have questions. And I'm honestly more on the messier freestyle. I mean, I can be neat if I want to be, but I'm just doing it really roughly, so, which is a little bit more fun. So I finished it do you see how it looks like a mini curtain? Like for a little, you can make a curtain for a dollhouse this way. And so I finished the gathering to the end. Okay. And then it's basically also what I realized, sort of how you make a pom-pom in a way, because then what you're going to do is, this is the more organic part. You just turn it like this. And you have to flip the last two ends together so you create this floppy flower, and then you're holding it in the back. It's a kind of like when you make the ghost out of the tissue, you know, sort of.
Like a bulge in the back.
Yes, and then you're holding that, and then with my needle and thread, I'm just going to randomly catch it in the back, and then just keep sewing and sewing until I've really. And I have a long thread, so it gets a little caught, but I did one stitch so far, and then that caught it together, but I'm going to do a bunch more so it doesn't go loose. Yeah, so it's like pinched in the back. How is yours working out, Tiffany?
It's not as good as yours. It's going, it's going.
And I'm really not the best fabric flower maker, but I do my best.
I don't think that's true. You underestimate or you overestimate my abilities with a needle here. But that's okay.
And when I made this last grouping, it was with my daughter and her friend, and they have little quick hands, so they know how to sew. And so, okay, I've sort of like a very rough Neanderthal sewer. I've really just tried to hack down this back as roughly as I can, just so it doesn't unravel. There's nothing neat about it or pretty. But then my trick is now you need to come through the front because the front's going to unravel. So I put the needle through the front, and then you have to sew that front down, or it's not going to. And so then with my hands, I try to just flatten it and then do a bunch of stitches like that to flatten it down. And the reason I mentioned this is the time where if you want to embellish it at all, I have for years and years, because these last forever, just these giant plastic beads and clear sequins. So as you're trying to mat down the front and flatten it, you can stick a few giant beads on the needle and thread.
Oh, that's nice.
And then just start to sew that down. Another nice thing to do is if you collect old buttons, like here's a little purple bell with a loop, just random things. You can just sew pieces of like little pretty old buttons, or, you know, we have a lot of kids' beads. Anything you want to sort of think about adding to the center. My needle got a little tangled. Now, I do remember, like some things my mom would do is she would shape each corner of the, so if you wanted to get more specific and like make pointier shapes like that, do you see that? You can then start to customize, or if you want to make it like a smaller flower, you can cut them smaller. That's where you can just, now it's up to you how you want to customize. And one thing that she always did with the originals, she cut out these leaves. Do you see on this one? This pink flower, and then there's the muslin leaves.
Oh, yeah.
Then with that extra fabric you didn't use, you can just freehand a kind of leaf shape if you want. So I kind of did it like that. And then that's why I said if you have any paint, lately I'm using a lot of green paint just because I'm painting a lot of flowers and plants and trees. So if you have any, this is acrylic, but watercolor gouache. And then what she would do is she would actually paint it. I don't know if you can see, so then it looks like a real leaf. And this all depends on how much time you want to put into it. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And sometimes she would do the edge. Because when we went into production, we had to copy her technique. So, and then she'd sew on the little leaf at the end. And then at that point, when you're done, or, you know, it's something too, you could work on it for days and months and weeks. And this one has, I put a lot of beads and a lot of clear sequins in the center. And then you can decide if you want to make it as a, like a pin. We had them, we made, it was a silk and muslin blazer for a suit. And it went, and then that's what it snapped on and off of that jacket. Or there was a dress that you could wear under that in the same material that you could also snap it on and off the dress. That's what I remember. It was all in this like cream silk muslin. And you could get involved if you want with different color stitches. So that's it.
It's great. You make it look so easy.
So I think it's just years of making.
Yeah.
And honestly, I never felt too confident about my technique, but if you do sit down and spend a long time on it and slow down, you can get more precise with it, you know, or make it more what your style is. Maybe you like smaller flowers. See, this one I put a felt circle in the center. You see that?
Nice.
And I had cut the edges smaller and then sewed them down so it's like looks more as if it's a flower shape, you know. This one is, I think one of the girls did this, and it's just like very fluffy and loose and cute, you know. Yeah. So I'm curious how everyone's turned out, how yours turned out.